It's time for Lombardi's list, breaking down, according to Michael's power ratings, the top 5 and bottom 5 teams in the NFL. And I think coming off of this past week, Michael, I'm very curious to see what you have here, because we had some wonky performances that I'm sure have moved around your numbers a little bit here. And for the past 2 weeks, it's been the San Francisco 49ers on top. They suffer their first loss of the season. Are they still there? Are they still number one?
Yeah. You know, because, look, they didn't really play a bad game. I mean, they're a kick away from being undefeated if Moody makes the kick. So, yeah, they did. Buffalo's numbers are going to start to go down based on what they gave up offensively. Kansas City's really gets carried by their defense more than their offense, but their offense is still really effective. And Baltimore moves in there because I think Baltimore's starting to play better. Baltimore's healthy now, too. And then Detroit and Philly are really tied for 5th place because Philly – didn't play well last week. Detroit's numbers have increasingly gone up on both sides of the ball. So, to me, those are the 6 best teams. Put them in 5 clusters. They're the same. I didn't have Baltimore as a team likely to make the playoff, likely to make the Super Bowl. Remember when I did that list? But I think these other 5 are right there.
So what needs to happen for the Ravens to start punching it in the red zone? 1 of 6 in the red zone in London this past week, settling for field goals left and right, which, hey, they got the points on the board, but you look at that total for the game specifically, it falls under. Should have been a no sweat over based on how many times that they were in scoring position. What needs to change for them to get there and continue to rise in your numbers?
I think what really has to happen is they've got to stay healthy, right? I mean, I think that's really important. They've got to stay healthy, and, they can't keep – their offensive line wasn't good earlier in the year because of health reasons. I think if they do that and the way Lamar's throwing the football and getting it to the skill, I think they're going to be really good. Look, they've got to be able to run the football because that's what they do, and they can run the football. But for me, I think ultimately what it comes down to is their health. Can they stay healthy, and can they rush the passer? I think Clowney's actually played really well for him. I mean, he's come in and played really well for him. So I think that's great. But for me, I think they ultimately got to stay healthy. Lamar's got to continue to play as well as he can play.
And a tough game this weekend against a Lions team that's also in your top that we were just talking about in the Survivor, like whether or not I or anyone would be willing to take a risk on an underdog in Detroit in this spot. Like, what do you make of that number sitting 3 this weekend for Baltimore?
I was surprised it was a little bit, it was 3. I thought it might be, under 3, to be honest with you. I thought it might go there. But I think there's so much love for Detroit in the marketplace. Plus, I mean, when you sit there and the fans read that Jared Goff is one of the most profitable players against the split, and so is the Lions. They're one of the most profitable teams since 2000 against the split, so against the spread. So I think ultimately, that's what gives a lot. But second road game for Detroit, no running back. This is what really keeps me away from Detroit in the game. Is without Montgomery, and maybe they'll have Gibbs, maybe they won't. I think that's a little problematic. But I do like Detroit's team, whatever happens here.
Yeah, I believe the expectation is that they should get Gibbs back. Montgomery going to be out for a little bit, according to Dan Campbell, with a rib injury. So something to keep tabs on because he has been excellent for Detroit to start the year. Let's go from the top 5 now to the bottom of the barrel. Michael, who are your bottom 5 this week?
Well, my bottom 5 is pretty much the same. I mean, when you go through it, Arizona is Arizona, Chicago, they moved up a little bit. Carolina is always kind of going to be teetering around there. The Giants, and then, of course, the Broncos. With, the Broncos just can't get anything going. When they think they're going to get something going offensively, they've had chances to win some games. I mean, let's be clear here. I mean, they got to, they're playing Kansas City as well as you could play. As bad as they are on defense, they played Kansas City as good as they can. They just make too many mistakes at the wrong time, and, they turn the ball over. I mean, that's a 24-20. Everybody's loving the Jets, right? It's a 24-21 game, and Denver's got the ball, and they could tie the game up on a drive. And, of course, Russell fumbles it, and next thing you know, it's over.
Yeah, they've been mistake-prone for sure. The Jets, who you mentioned, move off of your list. They were previously in the bottom 5, but coming off a win over the Philadelphia Eagles, and the turnovers that they were able to force against Jalen Hurts, I'm sure helped boost their numbers to an extent. They're not in the bottom 5, which surprised me a little bit. Where are the Patriots?
They're right there. They're right above it. They're I think they're 24th.
Okay.
They're not good at all. I mean, look, none of these teams, there's so many teams, I think, when you break it down, Stormy, and you look at the bottom, I mean, that's why I wrote the column last week. Like, there's very few teams that really have Super Bowl qualities to them. I mean, but when you go down the bottom, I mean, New England, Las Vegas, Tennessee, Washington, Atlanta, Indianapolis, the Chargers even, New Orleans, Green Bay, the Jets. Do you think any of those teams can win a Super Bowl?
Michael,
of course not.
Is this like, and granted, like we have a couple teams at the top that you feel pretty confident in, right? But it's still not like what we've seen in years past where you have a team that just feels like they are on a collision course and they're going to be there in the Super Bowl. It just has that feel the entire year. I don't think there's any team, maybe other than San Francisco, and it was a good thing that they got tripped up early to have that off their back the rest of the year, right? Maybe them. But other than that, still kind of a question mark. I feel like there are a lot of bad teams in the NFL right now, like more so than I remember in recent history.
And really, it's highlighted by bad quarterbacking play. You want to know why teams can't score in the red zone? Watch the quarterbacking play. And they're not giving the receivers a chance to make a play. They don't make throws in the red zone to get up to them. I mean, that's really what it is. We're getting a lot of bad quarterbacking play in the NFL. I mean, a lot of it. And that gives you no chance to win. And, a team that even has a good offensive coach is struggling to get good quarterbacking play. So I think it's really just there's such a disparity between good coaching and bad coaching or good quarterbacking. It's really hard.
The Carolina Panthers, the lone winless team so far here in the National Football League. There is a prop 17-1 for them to go winless the rest of the way. Do you think that's possible, or are they going to sneak a couple in?
I've often said to you, when I was at the Raiders in 2006, we won 2 games with the worst team in the history of football. There's no way they can't win games. There's no way.
As hard as it is to go undefeated, it's just as hard to go defeated.
It's even harder to not just kind of milk your way into one. Somehow, some way, kind of luck your way into a 1 win. So, yeah, I don't see how it's even remotely possible to not win a game. I know the Lions would test it. Rod Marinelli's Lions would argue with that, but you got to be really bad to do that. But look, Carolina, it's going to be interesting what Thomas Brown does with this play calling, because they're not as bad as you think they are, but they're just so bad in the offensive line. And the quarterback, again, he gets killed. I think a lot of our problem in the NFL today is there's no respect for protections. No one's taking care of the quarterback. No one's taking care of the quarterback. And when you manage the quarterback, like, for example, the other night, you could just tell that the Green Bay Raider game, I thought, was the perfect indication of what I'm talking about. Both head coaches were getting killed. Were getting killed for their play calling and all that. Really, what both coaches were trying to do was not let their quarterbacks beat them. That's what they were trying to do. See, it's easy for us to sit there and say, you got to be more aggressive. You got to go after it. That's what everybody said about Desmond Ridder. Now they want him benched. Right? Now they want him benched. So it's like, what do you want to do? So I think a lot of times teams are conservative because they don't want their quarterback to hurt them. And if you're the Raiders, you've lost 3 games because you had 3 turnovers. And the games you've won, you only committed 1 turnover in each of those games. So you're just a turnover machine. You're trying to limit your turnovers.
Yeah, there's a longer list of untrustworthy quarterbacks in the NFL than there are the ones that you feel very, very calm and confident in a lot of those moments.
Yeah, it's funny when I sit there and when people say, I can't bet that quarterback. Wait a minute. You can't bet that quarterback, but you're going to bet that one? I can't bet P.J. Walker. Well, you're going to bet somebody else? You're going to bet Gardner Minshew? Yeah. Are you going to go bet him? I mean, you saw what happened last week when you bet him. Now, sometimes guys play good against bad defenses. You can't let that lure you into sleeping. I mean, but you have to be real. Like, who is good?
What's so mind-boggling to me is that there's only 32 of these jobs, right? There's only 32 starting quarterback jobs in the country, in the world, in the NFL. And yet this is the caliber that we get for half of them.
It's really goes back to it's such an instinctive position. Yep. It's not the most talented player plays quarterback. It's an instinctive position, and it's hard.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.